Hey, good morning there, sweet peas. Basic Prepper Mom Myra. I realize it's been a while since I've been on here and that I posted anything, but there's a lot going on. For those of you who are not aware, on the Talk of the Tick, and I know a lot of people don't like it, there is a whole movement called basically Gen X is kind of rising up and going, yeah, no, we got called out. Some pink-haired girl called us out. We awake and we're here. So there's kind of this revolution of Gen Xers that are stepping up to really try to take over the country because everybody's sick of what's going on right now. So check that out because it's actually super cool, and this is not just a United States thing. This is literally all over the world that Gen Xers are coming together and going, I like how things are going. We're going to just do something about it. So anyway, been super involved in that too. But I was listening to someone else the other day and I realized that we really haven't discussed anything about logistics when you are being prepared. Now, we have a short-term plan. I think we've talked about, you have your emergency plan in place, have your get-home bag in place, have your communications in place on, if something happens and everybody's out and about, how are you getting home? What's the plan to get there? What direction do you go? What route do you take? What things do you put in your bag to get home? So we've got all of these like short-term. But when you're talking about long-term planning, what is your plan for that? And I know we've also talked about, organization and storage and things like that, like food storage. Okay, well, yeah, your storage is, you're storing up your food, but what is your self-sustainability? What is your self-reliant plan? Because realistically, if we end up in a long-term situation, your food stores are not going to last that long, especially if you have a large family, if you're taking in other people, whatever your situation is. So what is your long-term plan? What is your self-sustainability plan to be able to function? What is your long-term water storage? Because short-term, we can get water barrels, bottles of water and stuff like that and store up, but that's eventually going to run out. And if you figure 3 gallons per person per day, that water is going to dwindle fast. And then if you've got livestock, if you've got plants and a garden on top of it, that's going to really, really, really dwindle down very quickly. So what is your long-term plan? And I think that, it's really great to say, well, I've got animals and I can eat them if I have to, or I've got chickens and they produce eggs and I can eat the chickens and they can reproduce, That's great. But what is your long-term plan for feeding them as well? Because in an environment that you get a lot of rain, so like if you've got, if you're back east, if you're in an area that gets rainfall basically throughout the year, you've got a lot of green grass and stuff, your self-sustainability is going to be a whole lot easier versus someone in a dry, arid climate or a desert climate. Because for us, during the spring, when everything is, we've got a little bit of rain, everything's green, and there's bugs, and there's this, that, and the other, my animals can forage pretty well. But when all of that dries out and it just ends up being dirt, now you have a whole different situation, and your long-term plan is definitely going to change because now you have to supplement feeding those animals. So how do you do that? How do you supplement feed your animals that ultimately are going to feed you? So these are long-term things that you really need to think about. And how are you going to be self-sustaining? And your water storage, how are you long-term going to continue to get water? Now, if you have a well, you're pretty safe, I would think, unless the well dries up, obviously. But if you're on city or county water or whatever, or a utility service, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for you to procure your water. So right now you need to look at your long-term water source. Not necessarily storage, but what is your long-term water source? Now, we have a lot of rivers and lakes and streams and ponds and stuff in our area, and pretty much know where everything is. But when you get so many people concentrated into that area, like let's say ponds and lakes, okay, when you get so many people gathering water from that area, it's going to be really difficult because those smaller ponds and lakes are going to dwindle down quickly as well. So what is your long-term goal? What is your long-term plan? And I think probably the hardest thing to plan for is going to be the water. That's definitely going to be the hardest thing. When you're talking about food and things like that, yeah, you can grow a garden, you can do all this, but everything revolves around water. Your survival revolves around water. Your garden's survival revolves around water. Your animal's survival revolves around water. So water is definitely one of those things that you need to think about long term. And what is your goal? What is your plan when it comes to long-term water usage? To be quite honest, we've kicked some ideas around. We've thought about some things. We're like, okay, we definitely know where we can get water sources from, but what happens when those water sources actually dry up? Now, the good thing is we do have a very large mountain-fed lake that's somewhat close to us. It's not really close to us. It's about 25 minute drive from us. And we do have a couple of river outlets. So the rivers are going to be constantly flowing, and obviously in the wintertime when the rains happen, it kind of, flows everything. So I think we'll be okay, but it's getting there. And what if we don't have transportation? What if we don't have the fuel to be able to get there? Then what do we do? What's our plan then? Because to be quite honest, even if we talk about the river, we're still driving distance with a vehicle. We are still probably 20 minutes away. So basically we're about 20 to 25 minutes away from a major water source. That's driving with a vehicle. So if you're talking about, horse and buggy, or if you're talking about walking or a bicycle even, then you're looking at a lot of extra time. You're basically looking at almost probably a whole entire day just to get there, fill up, and come back. And if you're on bicycle, because our hills to get there are like this, then you're gonna really be in a lot of trouble. And how much water can you actually bring back with you to get up and over those hills and stuff if you're on a bicycle with a little trailer? So these are definitely things to think about. Your logistics are things to think about long term. We've kind of not really talked about long term, if stuff does happen and we end up in a long-term situation, but this is something that you and your family really need to think about, really need to look at, because don't wait until it happens. Don't wait until it almost happens. Have a plan, a long-term plan put in place. If you're doing a garden, you should have already had stuff in the ground or in the greenhouse or starting to grow. I'm not a garden person. If you have animals, you should have already been, figuring out what your plan is for not only raising them or housing them, but how to long-term feed them as well. And what animals can you have on your property that are going to be the most self-sustaining, but yet you're going to get more out of it. So kind of more bang for your buck, where you're not going to have to supplement them food. Beef is really great. I would love to have beef, but you're looking at trying to maintain them and feed them, and that's a lot. Either hay or grass, a pasture, and then a lot of people will supplement them sweet feed or grain or whatever. So they're definitely, in my opinion, for me, for my family, that's a higher maintenance animal to try to keep fed, to try to keep just try to keep in general. So look at animals, look at things with your situation that's going to stay with you long term and that you can be more self-sustaining with. All right, that's what I have to talk about today. Look at your logistics long term. Once again, if you have any questions or comments, we'll talk. Please reach out to me. We'll talk to you guys later. Have a great, amazing day, and we'll talk to you soon.